Tabletopped will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Hi, Excursionist. I'm Nari. Why don't you join me at the Into the Night Anthology podcast? Bring a friend along when you find us on your favorite podcast directory, and make sure to follow us on Twitter at Into the Night Pod so you never miss an episode. Remember, you should never wander these twisted paths alone. In fact, look, the first path is just ahead. Are you ready? Follow me.
Amidst the wreckage and recovery from war, a new secret war begins in the alleys, docks, gambling pits, and sewers of Aratai. A war of assassins, smugglers, crime lords for the underbelly of the city. Caught in this struggle, a bounty hunter and a thief for hire find themselves entrusted with the protection and life of a very special child. This is a story from the shadows of Aratai. Premieres November 12th on Dice Legends.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletop. Today we are talking about familiars, mounts, NPCs, how to run them, and involve your players into their stories. So, who do I have with me today?
Hey, it's me, Franco.
Just Franco? No Old Man Franco anymore?
No, yeah, I'm Young Man Franco again.
What happened to Old Man Franco?
He died and was
He
reborn.
died?
Yeah, it was like a whole vision quest or whatever, you know?
He died on a vision quest. Cool.
Yeah, and then he came back as me.
Oh, normal
Yeah,
Franco.
like Baby New Year.
Oh, cool. Okay. Who's over there across the table?
It's me, Daniel, at Coronor on Soch.
Soch?
On Soch.
Is this the new thing, Soch?
Yeah, the greasers and the socias.
I'm also a young man now, so I use internet.
Hey, so you use young man slang like
Yeah.
Soch.
And he's got an at.
And he's flossing right now, guys. Just
Wait,
so you know how
who's
timely.
that? Who's that right now? Who's speaking?
Shade. Hi.
All right, guys, welcome. You guys we were kind of coming up with ideas about what we wanted to talk about, and you guys pitched the idea of like NPC, like items, magical items that can talk, or mounts, or whatever, these things that your players may not, interact with in a negative way, but instead in a sort of companion way. So this is a really hard thing to do, in my opinion, because a lot of times when you have somebody who's like involved with your player, either backstory wise or is like a talking sword, I find it really hard to like involve myself in where they want their character to go without kind of mapping it out with them beforehand. So like sometimes I just like to let them run that, but then you have the issue of they don't have the DM knowledge. So like what the magic sword that can direct them towards the big bad evil guy can't really come from them. So what do you guys have? Like, what do you guys think about this stuff?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's called the buddy system.
Mm-hmm.
It's when your players have a buddy, and it's just you improv a little bit. You give them just enough for them to set up the next thing that they want. So they'll ask for what they want you to tell them. You just wait for that moment, and then the magic sword goes, "Oh yeah, that." I don't have an example.
but what about, so like, yes, I agree that if you're using it as a task giver or a kind of a quest guide, then that makes a whole lot of sense. But if you want to try to get your characters to have a actual relationship with this NPC that isn't super quest oriented or part of your overall plot, it is a literal character relationship. How do you do that in a way, like, how do you do that essentially?
I mean, I like it when, it doesn't like the talking sword could also just, you're like, oh, what should I do next? And the talking sword's just like, I don't know.
What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think it is? And I mean that can also be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, the willfully ignorant, like, magical item. I have no idea what we should do. What do you feel?
Well, I
we
mean,
should
like,
be
why
doing
would the
right
magic
now?
sword know any more than you do?
Yeah, I guess.
You remember that one thing that the McElroys did? Dust, I believe it was.
No,
Never
it
did
was
see it.
Amnesty, the sword.
Okay, well,
Oh,
you
yeah.
tell them about it.
Eat my whole ass. That's
So-
my favorite moment of that whole season.
To your
It's
point,
like a belt.
Yeah, there's two different schools essentially. It really depends on what you want this NPC to be. If you want it to be a fun little familiar that really doesn't go much beyond just being a pet. So looking at the McElroys and Amnesty, like you said, Justin had a sword belt thing that
Duck Newton.
that could speak for his character Duck Newton, and he voiced both parts, and that was because the sword had really only so much knowledge, and it was really just a moment for Justin to play off of his own jokes. But if you wanted it to be NPC quest giver, that's where I would say, no, that should not be voiced by the player itself. That should be voiced by the GM, the DM.
But there are certain moments I guess we'll just keep using Amnesty as the example.
Sure.
But there are certain
Go
moments.
listen to this other podcast. Stop this one.
Yeah, it's a
real
pretty
quick.
good one.
They're a small group. They're struggling and trying to find their place.
But the thing about it was that the sword actually eventually became sort of a very story-centric piece and would interact with big story moments in a way of like sort of previous knowledge or things like that. And it kind of tied everything together. And I think that they were able to pull that off because, that is written, they have meetings where they talk about where the direction of the story is going to go and how to best get there. And they write stuff out. If they get something wrong, maybe they re-record a bit so that it makes more sense.
We never do that here.
Never. This is all single take. It's perfect every time. And we don't spend, 20 minutes at the top of episodes fucking up and laughing about it.
At all.
But
Never have we ever.
But in that case, like, without the ability to do that and be like, oh, can we take that scene again? I need to like alter how this interaction went. And a lot of it is, like you said, Daniel, improv on the fly. How do you get like a really deep, meaningful NPC connection out of your players if either you are voicing them and you have the story knowledge as a DM, or if you give it to them, how do you kind of guide it so that means something to the greater story?
I mean, if you give it to them, it's kind of on them, right? like it's, yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of it's going to be like player trust. You're like, okay, I'm setting this up, but you have to dunk it in. So you can't really like force anyone to do that. You just got to kind of put all the pieces on the board and hope it comes together.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really uncommon. Like, I don't recommend having the PC also like play that, if it's like a hireling or if it's a pet or whatever. Like, I don't know. I mean, like, recommend, like, I think it's because like you have to think of that creature as its own person. And so the PC wants what the PC wants. And like some players are mature enough to be able to be like, oh, well, surely like the NPC that that is like attached to me, has its own wants and desires, but like not always. And it can be more surprising if the GM is running them as well. So you can kind of account for I don't want to say less mature player, but you can account for like, maybe a less mature player that would be like, oh yeah, my pet would totally sacrifice itself right now.
Yeah.
Versus like the DM saying like, the pet will sacrifice itself for you right now. And you're going to feel really bad about it.
Sure.
Because I'm going to role play this in a way that you will feel bad about
And
it.
there's also a way for a DM to like sort of balance between a sentient creature or sentient item and an intelligent creature and an intelligent item.
Yeah.
If you want like them to be guided by a magical weapon such as a sword, you don't have to voice it. You don't have to give it like dialogue. You can just be like, oh, you have a sense of warmth and rightness as you did that last action that you took. Or like you feel like the sword turning against you. You feel like a barrier's going up between you and your weapon. It's like, okay. Use it to guide them without having to actually put another character into the party, but have them still feel like there's something like relying on them to do this or that that's traveling with them.
Yeah, and you can even put like mechanical constraints on them too. Like, oh, you use the sword to like kill an innocent person or something like that, which, you know, why are you doing that? You know, and it's like, well, now, you know, you have like all of your crit successes are now crit fails or something like that. Or even I'm thinking about when we did Lakewood, and Carmen was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna do whatever I want magic wise," and then you just started punishing me for it, you know. And then you're just like, "Yeah, like people are kind of turning against you because you're acting really like
erratic."
You're acting very erratic. Or, you know, like things with like the doll going like kind of dark or whatever, like the doll that I had as like a magical focus. Like getting like kind of creepy, and then there being like a negative effect, or, you know, like the paranoia stuff or something where, you know, if I spend a luck point, you know, it triggers one of my like negative qualities, and, you know, triggering that, like that can also be, you know, where you know, you're like triggering these like negative things because you're interacting with the world, including, you know, people that are attached to you.
That's a good point. I think that this is the thing that I sort of used in Lakewood that I had some success with, but it's always kind of tough with this, because what I tried to do with Lakewood was let the players invest in who they wanted to invest in. And then I would just take the care to be like, oh, this person really keeps talking to this person and seems to value that relationship and the story that they want to tell. I will give that character a lot of attention and like care when I am that character to address whatever story that they're trying to push with it, rather than use that character as some sort of story progressing tool in another way. Like, you know, Kosuke didn't like come up to you and be like, I have a quest for you. Yeah. He was sort of like, Carmen, what the fuck is happening? Yeah. So I think that that was an easy way to get you guys to invest, because all I did was say, oh, they seem to be interested in this one person that they just keep talking to. I will make that person really important and really part of their story. But then there's other things, like the big question I usually have, and one that I am always really cautious about, is with warlocks in D&D. Because patrons are so specific to the type of character you're trying to run. Like if you have someone who's like, I'm like in their head, they're like, I really want this to be somebody who had like no choice but made a pact with a fiend and is desperately trying to get out of it, maybe. Or maybe is like, I'm super into fiends, I really love this. And they have a certain patron in mind when they make that character, and they have a certain way that they want to interact with it, and like how that patron will relate to their character. And as a DM, you can like very easily betray that notion in the character's head, which will actually cause distance from them being able to role play their character, because they'll be like, oh, that's not who I thought I was, kind of thing. Just because you are, you know, improving off of their character story. So that's like the thing for me where I'm like, do I want to play Warlock? Because then that is like a problem. I am terrified of DMing for Warlocks because of that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've ever done it where I've had like I don't think I've ever done that with success. Yeah. You know, like I think it's weirdly difficult. I don't know. Maybe you guys have different experiences.
Because the patron's going to be very tied into the character's like idea of self.
It's literally like one of the core things to a Warlock's character is like the patron, why they made the deal, what they get out of it. You know what I mean?
Which is why I always handle Warlocks as it was a bargain. They asked, you gave, and it's resolved in your backstory. I don't really bring it into the main front because there's really no way to do that.
It can be very like you can do it, but it's so it gets into like really weird mechanical gray areas. Like I had somebody with like an archfiend patron, and I was like, I don't know, maybe the patron wants you to like corrupt some souls or something, and like it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, so I would say in that case, it comes down to really having conversations regularly with the player about, okay, look, you've got this higher power NPC who is going to drive motives. You've got a relationship that is important to you.
Oh wait, you're running a Warlock patron
not
for me.
Yes. I am.
Forgot. I think you're doing it really well.
It's fine.
I'm glad we brought this up.
It's fine. But
no, I do think so. And I was just saying, like, I feel like I haven't done it right, and I feel like the thing that you did was like, oh, this is tied in really well with the rest of the story.
This is a note for our listeners. The patron like conversations or whatever are actually not public knowledge to all the players, so this is kind of going to be in code.
No, people know I'm a warlock, right?
We know that you're a warlock, but we don't know what your patron's deal is with you, because every time you go into whisper conversations.
So and that's something that you need to have a conversation with the player as well. So all three of the other people in this room, in this recording, I'll say, actually, because we do have someone else lurking.
Oh God, it's a ghost.
But we, all three of you have relationships in our Waterdeep campaign that maybe other players have some understanding of a little bit, but your characters don't necessarily. And really, it's a conversation of one, with your player, at what point are you comfortable with that being public knowledge? Normally, I would really, I've played both ways, and I would now, as I'm getting older and crankier, just thank you, play it open, and just be like, hey, your character doesn't know this, but you as a player do, and you just have to kind of enjoy that moment and play dumb with your characters. But you need to be having that conversation.
RP challenge.
RP challenges, right?
I mean, we've advocated that in our character secrets conversation in the past.
Exactly.
Just like say at the beginning, this is the character secret we have, and then the whole party can try to drive the story into interesting places with that secret.
Exactly.
But in Waterdeep, we actually have a few characters where we're like, we know a general thing, but we don't know the specifics of it. And I'm also enjoying that too, of this sort of like in between place. Like, I don't know how bad Daniel's deal with Asmodeus is. Like, I'd have no idea. I don't, and I don't really know who Franco's patron is. I just know some of the.
Good luck. You don't even know my fucking changeling.
Yeah, that's very fun. My character just consistently is just like looking the wrong way when Franco transforms,
which is a lot of fun. But I want to have those conversations with the player about, hey, okay, there's a moment, I might spring it on you because there's a moment that's going to happen, and that needs to be a oh shit moment. But I want to have a general understanding of where do you want to take the character ultimately. Is your character actually dedicated to the patron and their cause in the case of warlocks, or to the god and their cause in the case of a cleric?
Oh yeah, clerics are also very much like this.
Another good example of that. Or is this something that the player has an attachment with an NPC? Is this something that is so formative to them? And you want to handle that with care, and that really happens outside of the game. There are going to be improv moments, and I think that that's true to life. There are going to be moments where people you thought you knew, people you love, they're going to surprise you. And they might do something that seems wholly out of character. And you can look at that as, oh, I fucked up as a DM. And, that's why you want to do those kind of health checks, because, maybe the player will go, oh, that was my brother, and my character's brother would have never, ever thrown that orphan off the bridge. Ever.
God, the orphan throwing bridge, it's in the name.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta do it. You gotta, anyway, but...
how else are you gonna make your wish?
Yeah. But at that moment...
Where is this bridge?
Oh, it's...
Who built it? Why is it there?
It's
absolutely gruesome.
It was John Quincy Adams. He built it.
John Quincy Adams, please.
No. Common mistake. It's not John Quincy. It is John Quincy, the other guy.
He built the bridge.
Yes, there are two different
John
guys.
Quincy Adams, the architect, famous bridge builder.
From the 1920s. Anyway.
Put that NPC in your game.
The bridge.
Smoke it.
You think I fucking won't? But, that's a moment where you check in after, because that should be kind of a heightened moment of like, that brother just threw an orphan off the bridge. That should have some impact anyway. You check in after the game. You say, hey, this happened. What did you think about that player? And the player says, my brother would have never done that. Cool. You can go two ways with that. One, you could, cop out and be like, it was a changeling all along. It wasn't your brother.
Wow.
It was someone, be really...
You were dreaming.
Yeah, exactly. You could do that. I don't necessarily recommend that.
Just
Instead,
an illusion made.
I think that you can then take that and go, okay, Now I need to understand the motives better of the brother.
Right.
And
he had to do it because the orphan had a bomb on it.
sure.
If the orphan stopped moving like slower than 30 miles per hour, it would have exploded.
Exactly.
If the orphan got dry at all,
So, but you can kind of figure that out, and then this is going to add extra layers to that character, to that relationship, and you can play with that because again, people do surprise you.
So
that orphan was your other brother
Yeah.
all along.
Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about more sentient NPC characters that you can like have in your campaign. I still think that there's like more depth to Plum. We could still talk about like gods and patrons for like forever. Maybe we'll do an episode specifically on that. But let's shift a little bit into less sentient things like pets and mounts.
Wow,
and
less
stuff
sentient?
Like
What the fuck?
less intelligent as a stat block.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's so wrong. Yeah, well, I mean, unless you're like, your mount is a rock, like an animated rock,
These the pioneers used to ride these babies for miles.
like a wizard that has like a pet rock, they turns into his mount.
I love that.
It's a rock.
So
Fuck, that's good.
That's a rock fact.
That's a rock fact.
I want to tell you about what you shouldn't do with the player's pet.
I can't wait.
Because we're going to go back in time to 3.5.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm just a wee young lad in college.
A wee young
playing D&D on the weekends when I can.
Yes.
And I had talked to my DM.
Yes.
And I had gotten a druid character.
Yes.
Who had split his hit points.
A druid.
Oh. Don't you
A
dare
druid?
interrupt me. Oh, I swear.
I am
Groot.
Groot.
I will start this story over.
No, continue, please.
So, I split my hit die
Yeah.
for my animal companion, and I had two pets, a wolf and a monkey. And the monkey rode the wolf. And it was the cutest goddamn thing you've
That's
ever
adorable.
seen. And I'd have them just run around and like distract and steal things.
Did someone kill one of them and not the other?
No, he killed both of them.
Ah!
And I found out he killed them both because I killed his villain too fast. So he wanted to up the stakes. So he kept his bad guy alive long enough just to kill my pets. So that it wouldn't be too easy.
I love
Don't
a
do
vengeful
that.
DM.
Okay, so
Pets are important to people.
yeah. So I mean that's a very good point because you want to again have an understanding of what a player wants from these NPCs that make a big impact on their characters' lives. And this is a tricky one because in 5th edition D&D, you can have familiars, you can have Beastmaster Ranger things, you can have
Drake Warden.
Yep, Drake Warden.
Yep.
A billion. Maybe you just got an actual pet. Maybe you've got a sidekick character because that's something that is
Maybe
now.
you've got a Neopet.
Yep, I have a Neopet. That's
Maybe
probably
you have
gonna
a
die 'cause
chia
you forgot
pet.
forgot to water that one. But some of these have stat blocks and are going to be activated in combat, so you need to kind of know where the logic around that.
Know when to hold them. Know when to fold them.
Huh? Yep. Know when to walk them.
The thing about pets, I think that's a good way to start is to say like, what do you want to get out of this pet? Because I think that
so mercenary. They have feelings too.
So mercenary. Because I think that you can then start to, if you're playing the pet or mount or whatever,
I think in another game we had our sometimes co-host Sean wanted a shadow hound pet,
the black shuck.
So I was like, well, okay, if you want to just have it as a pet, you can't use it in combat. You gotta give up the whole summon it and it will attack. Like if you want it to just have it forever, you can, no problem, but don't use it for combat.
Yeah.
And then of course, obviously, he used it for combat, and I had it it's been out for way more than 10 minutes, bro. It immediately poofed.
Yeah.
Too exhausted. So
because it's a summon pet.
It's summoned.
Yeah.
So I was like, so again, you got have conversations.
I think that
make
there's
sure
like
everyone knows what's up. And yeah, sometimes as a DM, you gotta be like, you went back on the deal, bro.
You can probably you could do stuff in that case where it's like, especially for summoners, like specific, like if you have someone who wants a Pikachu, to like stay out of the Pokeball, you could just say like, okay,
they do that sometimes.
your summon can't be in combat until you summon its like martial
Once you use the
capabilities.
ability.
Yeah.
Which I think was...
It's like you imbue it with the martial energy or whatever it is.
like you fill it up. Fill up the tank.
is the direction it ended up going with Sean's
and he just like whimpers away as a
dog
chihuahua.
as well. Conlon is
spell's
the
over.
character. Figure out the action economy, but then also looking and understanding, is this something that, because a summoned creature is vastly different than something that is just constantly existing in the world. Something that's constantly existing in the world, like your wolf and monkey. Was it a wolf or was it a dog? Wolf. It was a wolf. Okay. Wolf and monkey.
How dare you call it a dog?
Sorry.
It's a full-fledged wolf. Roo, motherfucker.
It's my favorite bar, the Wolf and Monkey.
The wolf and monkey. But that was something that was just physically there. You found them out in the world. Your DM was an absolute asshat for doing that. But if it had
Put
been
him on
something...
blast, dox his ass right now.
What's his name?
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
What's his social security number?
Just kidding. Great. We'll beat that out.
Had they been summoned, that's fair game because you can summon it again. And you can play with the nuances on does summoning it, do they retain the memories? Do they retain all that stuff? Do they remember the pain that they went through? Yeah. I mean, maybe they do. I would personally, that's another conversation with your player.
Yeah.
If you want them to, but they should know that reality. There's a really cool short run comic series called Die, and it's silly. It's one of those isekai. Is that what you're saying? Yep. Wherein isekai. Thank you. Where a group of British teens in the late 1980s they get Jumanji'd into a D&D-esque world of their own creation. And
it's not quite it's okay, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar.
I mean, if you want to be specific, it's a Japanese trope where somebody gets hit by a car or dies and then is reincarnated with their memories of their previous life and skill sets, sometimes getting special supernatural powers to then have dominion over their new world. That's a different trope, but it's okay.
Okay. He pushed his glasses up like 20 times during that sentence. Anyway, they just kept falling. Yeah.
They're like embedded in their
The flash of reflective light.
But, anyway, they get Jumanji'd into this world, and then they come back, and then they have to go back again.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. One of the characters has a summoned creature, and it's a dog, and that thing clearly... she seems to
clearly feels pain.
it does when it's out,
Yeah.
but she seems to think that when it's not summoned away, that it is like a dog sitting somewhere alone, just waiting in the darkness for its owner to come home. Like she has this deep feeling, and it's this big emotional investment, and that could be interesting narratively, or it can be an awful experience because maybe you've had pet trauma in the past.
Yeah, that's another thing is like, I feel as though DMs, and we've talked about this in the past where it's like, oh, you make them care and then you use it for your story.
Yeah, you take a pencil, you name it Nick, and then you snap it in half in front of their face.
What was it like Brennan Lee Mulligan once, like, his best quotes is like, I'm gonna kill that dog. I saw it on TikTok, but it's like, let the players know you're out for blood before you go out for blood, I guess. That's all you gotta do.
That's fair.
Your accent came out so hard on that. I'm gonna kill your dog.
I think that like that is important to be able to do and use it in like a realistic like heart pulling moment so that you can really invest your characters. But I also think that a really important part of these storytelling moments and like games is building up a catalog of moments where that is not on the table.
Correct.
Like it is just moments where you are character building with this other thing. Maybe it's like you said, this
You're
dog
brushing the horse's hair.
Yeah, and then like the horse looks at you and there's a gleam in its eye and it just explains isekai like to you.
Just tells you all about you.
And then you lose every bit of affection you had for it.
Yeah, and then you're like, now I'm out for blood.
Yeah, now I'm out for blood.
It recaps every chapter of Monthly Girl Nozaki-kun.
you sit down at the campfire after brushing the horse and you're like, hey, yeah, we really need glue, don't we?
Oh, wow.
But yeah, no, I agree because, and we've all done it. We have all absolutely done this where we introduced an NPC and boom, that NPC's dead real quick. That's definitely happened for each of us and to each of us. It really matters for you to have the investment because it's not enough to say, oh, I have parents. My RPG character is one of the rare ones that doesn't have a traumatic background, da-da-da-da-da. If the first time we see those parents as players or in our little shared narrative is, they've been killed on Tatooine, that doesn't matter. It mattered more that we saw them pouring the blue milk and talking with Luke and
that blue milk.
All that stuff.
Yum,
I
yum.
really don't like Star Wars, but I'm just going to use it because it's easy. You got to build those moments.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
No, I mean, Nick said it. It's Nick's right.
Yeah, I'm right. No, I just think that it's
I just meant
important.
about Star Wars.
Oh, yeah, no, Star Wars is fine. You're right, yeah. This is now our sub-podcast, hating Star Wars.
Let's switch into Let's Hate Star Wars edition.
Well, we're losing so many viewers.
I don't mind Star Wars.
No, it's fine.
Let's say
I love Star Wars, but I do not like the movies.
yeah.
Oh, well, like Knights of the Old Republic is fun. We're way off track.
Yeah,
now.
let's move back towards the NPC characters, items, things like that have.
So sometimes
Back to
your
something more
players
familiar.
have a pet buddy.
Woo!
I missed that one, but I heard
Owlicious,
it later.
Owlicious, Garrel, Kenny Chesney.
I forgot about Kenny Chesney.
Yeah, Kenny Chesney.
I just think
Subtweeted
that
him.
I still think it's hard to do it as a DM. I think it's hard to do it if you give it to the player too. Because you actually, Daniel, I'm pointing at Daniel, everyone. You experienced this too because at the end of our Canaries campaign, you started bringing back characters that they used to play. And that actually became, like you were talking to me about, it was like, oh, this is kind of difficult because you're like, they have story things that they have to kind of get out and they're there for a reason. But then players are like, oh, am I playing my old character too? And I'm like doing those role-playing moments. And then you're like, I don't know.
Yeah, and then you told me I really wish I hadn't let them play their own characters.
Yeah, no, that was a disaster. I'll never do it again.
Interesting.
Because you put because our group is already 7 deep.
Yeah.
So imagine 7 people with
With 2
one or
characters
2
each.
alternate backdrop stuff that you brought in because I gave everyone a chance to play an adventure.
Except me.
Because you only had the one person the whole time.
Yeah, because I play by the rules.
Yeah, you're a good person.
I also only had one person the whole time.
Franco's the number
Yeah,
1
Bill
gold
Stabbles.
star earner, Gilded Canaries.
Yeah,
2
I went
seasons.
1 to 20.
1 to 20. He did it. But I had a point, and that point was, once everyone had 2 characters, I was like, okay, so choose if you want to play as this guy or that person, and then everyone did, and we went to an adventure, and then they were all still there. People still was like, oh, I'll just go back and forth. I was like, well, you can't go back and forth because I got to tell a story, and I got to know who's going to be involved in it. And then if they had an NPC show up, they'll go, oh, well, this is what they are going to do. It's like, no, I'm running this. And it was a little both hands on the wheel. And there was no session 0 about what was happening.
See,
Everyone was winging it based on what they felt was right in the moment.
Yeah.
And everyone was right, but it was also kind of bad. And in the end, it was just
It's not
everyone just pick, and we're not going to talk to the other people at all anymore.
I'm gonna just say clarify one moment, which is that it wasn't bad. It was just long,
Yeah.
and you were like, "We have 2 episodes left," and then you're like, "We have 2 episodes left," and then 2 months later, you're like, "We have 2 episodes left." So I think that was more the problem. Is
Yeah.
that just elongated the story because you had way more hooks and things that you had to resolve and more screen time essentially.
I think it was also the thing that you were saying though, because you have I feel like there's I don't know, at a certain point you're like, okay, are you done playing this character? You're like, yeah, great, it's mine now. There has to be that point, and if you don't really want to bring them back like that, I don't know, I feel like there should be some kind of agreement where you're like, here's a retirement mechanic.
Yeah.
and now this is what your character's doing or whatever.
we are so wildly off track.
Oh, we are, aren't we?
Yeah, but
But this is just the session where your old PCs are your sidekicks.
But I think
Okay.
I would like to dip into this because I don't think there's a full episode worth of this.
Yeah.
But I think that it's really an interesting topic of how do you deal with old players' PCs in games, because like especially if you have a shared universe. Because I know Shade, you have a really strong opinion about this.
Do,
and
yeah.
and like obviously Franco, you just had like stated a pretty strong opinion. I have like I think the middle opinion between the two. So let's do a final showdown. Shade, what's your response?
Look, one, I'm gonna say, Daniel, I had a really fun time. I enjoyed that. I think if you wanted to do it again, I actually thought it would be a perfectly fine thing, because yeah, there was a little confusion at a moment of like, okay, well, it would make more sense for this character to go there than this other character. So I'm going to play this one this week, and I know that put a little hardship on you. But if we had some kind of like laid out, this is what you as a DM want from this, then we could have worked within that a little bit more.
Right.
That said, I am very much of the opinion that NPC characters can turn into NPCs if a conversation has happened already. Because I think if we are saying that you need to be careful with NPCs in backgrounds of characters, because you're really attacking the player's sense of that character. Boy, howdy, can you attack their sense of the character if you take the actual character itself, even if that's not the character they're playing right now, but it's a different character, and you do something and it's like, wow, no, that's not the vibe of that character at all. We had a different idea of this. I don't know why this character would have come here, things like that. It can happen. It could be good, but there does need to be some early conversations. I'm a huge fan of retirement systems.
Oh, wait, I was going to say I agreed with all of that, Shade. I don't think that contradicted anything I said.
No, I want to come in here too because I want to talk. So I think that like both these things of like using them within your world is like such a strong impulse, and I think is valid. I think that the way that I try to like get in the middle of all these things, like especially like, I'm a huge fan of endings. I love endings, but I also love an ambiguous ending where you can say like, this character is not done. Their adventure is over, but we don't know what's going to happen the rest of the time.
Yeah.
And like with Lakewood, Ivy, I thought my sense of the character had a very final moment where I was like, she basically walked through a big door of light and into another realm and had finally moved on. But then like that character, that player was like, oh, like I actually see that she eventually gets bored in that like nice afterlife sense and wants to pull that character into an Iconite thing, which my sense of the character would never have done. But I was like, but you're the player. So like, obviously you have a closer relationship to that character. You know what that character is. And I think that what DMs have to do is like, the way that I think about it is, this is my story. This is how that character acted within the story. That is the character within this setting. Yeah. And then anything that happens after that is not your story, and it is hands off sort of thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And to the Ivy point, it's a great example, because sometimes, because I know for a fact that player Jackie, love you, honey, was very satisfied and thought that was the perfect ending for her. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it for forever. And then it just happened that a conversation on our Discord, which, reminder, we have a Tabletop Discord. That conversation
please join.
didn't happen there, but other conversations
Go to
do.
tabletoppod.com and hit the little Discord button. You'll be invited.
Yeah. Anyway, we had a conversation.
Seamless, guys.
Seamless. Oh, so good. We're so good at segues.
Call the marketing department. We hit our numbers, boys.
Woo! Anyway, there was just a conversation, and there was a realization, oh, hey, there's something more that I can do with my character. And so that's why I think it is very careful. You got to be very careful with the characters afterwards. It is the player story. There is one exception that I have for that, though, and that is if your character outright sells their sense of control to, I mean, for example, Natalia,
or Mallory, You just had to take
Carmen.
Mallory.
Characters that none of you necessarily know, listeners, but,
and all run by me.
Yes, well, except for one of them, ran by Franco. If there are mechanical aspects of like, okay, I'm going to 100% sell my free will away in some fashion, that is implied that you don't control that character anymore, player. Yeah. So that's tough.
As with anything in life, communication is key.
Correct.
Communication, consent, understanding.
Yeah.
But I also like, this is the thing that is so, because I've also heard a lot of DMs and say like, oh, I had my old character, like my player's old character be an NPC. They're a king now, and they are a quest giver essentially, and like that can also be really sick. Like honoring of the people, especially if you have sort of like a legacy system and within a setting like Coronor. We usually jump around time periods, but if we did another campaign right after Canaries, maybe like Bill would be like in the Assassin's Guild or something, you know what I mean? And like be a quest giver. And I feel like
Sigra would be a god.
But I think that is also like, I think that, it's just like a quick conversation of like, hey, you cool with this? I love your character so much. I want to include it in this way. Right. But I don't know. Like, do you guys have any like opinions against that? Like, I don't know.
No, that's very cool. I think
no, I love that.
No, that sounds really cool. I think what is this episode about?
I mean, ultimately, I think if we were to summarize it, dear listener, it comes down to a character's sense of self based on their relationships.
I think it did drift a little bit, where it's like these
Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, we Fast and the Furious 2 Tokyo drifted into a new understanding of what this episode is, which is how do you interact with a player's sense of character, like sense of self, in a way that doesn't break that, but also allows you to tell a story that they don't have control over. And I think that is true when it comes to NPCs, familiars, and mounts. The name of the episode.
Well, it was.
Or when you talk about old characters of players and things like that. I think that it's really like again, huge fan of Brendan Lee Mulligan. I think we're all pretty much in that camp.
But that
guy. He once said that one thing that's really hard about death, and we've talked about this too, is that you can have a sudden death, and even a sudden death at the hands of like a goblin or whatever. But it has to not contradict who that player thought the character was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you just have to narratively make sure that those line up, and you can really do anything, because like a person is not usually mad that their character dies because they're like oh, like fuck, my character's dead, and like all that kind of stuff. They're usually mad because they're like that's how it happened, like that's the end of that character. That doesn't make sense, that doesn't feel good, and then immediately there's distance. And I think that also causes a lot of people to come in to their like second character with like a lot of distance too, being like I'm just gonna pump the brakes on this guy a little bit. So I think that's right. We just need to align the stories that we tell with characters and elements of the story that people don't have control over with like care, I guess. Daniel, you're pouting. What's up?
I'm tired, man. I've been up since 3 a.m. This day of recording.
Yeah, I would love, like all the listeners, I hope that the fundraising is still happening. Go to extralife.com. You can start your own team. You can just donate to any of the teams on there. I know like Magic the Gathering has one if you're a Magic player. But just donate, because it'll go to a hospital of your choice, and it's a really cool thing. We raised like $7,000 today, so it was fun.
Yeah, that goes all the way through when again?
It goes through November into early December, so you can just keep donating. Basically, they'll accept your money whenever, but if you don't get it through on this year's, you can just immediately start for next year as well. So
that's right.
Cool.
And isn't charity the best familiar of all?
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of Tabletopped. We'll talk to you next week on Monday. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Tabletopped. We are so glad that you, our community, listen to us week after week. If you'd like to join the community a little bit more deeply, you can go to our website, tabletopppod.com, and hit that Discord button. You're going to be invited to our Discord server where we talk everything tabletop games. It's a really good time, and everyone, the hosts are all there, so you don't even have to just talk to me. But we were talking most of the episode about familiars, and one of our hosts has something specifically about familiars. Franco, what you got going on?
I have a supplement called Familiars, Caring for and Summoning Familiars. So it's kind of like a apocalypse world system, a 2d6 system for creating, generating familiars, and then how to summon them, how to care for them, and like we were talking about in the episode, how to tips for the game master to make the familiars feel real and have their own agency with agendas.
Yeah, one thing I really like about your little module that you made for it is like you have like a personality table that has their like pros and cons essentially, and you also have like a I don't know what you call it. It's not a trauma table, but it's something that like if they die and get resummoned, they have something that is like weird about them or something that they fear or something.
Right, because in D&D, you can find familiar, you can find mount or whatever, and then they
me, unicorn,
and then they just poof out of existence, and then they come back and they're like, hey, I'm back. But that's not always how it can work. Sometimes it could be a little bit more interesting or traumatic, or the familiar could just be shy and not want to come back for a second,
or like eat gold or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys are interested, you can go to Franco's website, Franco.
FrancoAlvarado.com. I also have an itch.io page, and I'll share it in the Discord, I guess, too.
Yeah, and it's also going to be on the Twitter, so head to our Twitter handle. That's @Tabletopped on Twitter. And we'll have it there, and it will be in the show notes. So take a look. It's really, really cool.
Oh, and it's also pay what you want, so...
You hear that? Pay what you want, everyone. It's the perfect Christmas gift. All right, bye.
Bye.